you're going to be hit hard. And this is the one I told you, like when I was working for Whipple, I didn't realize that some challenges were going to come up. And I thought that was indicative that I was on the wrong track. But really, it wasn't that I was on the wrong track. I just didn't accept the challenge. I turned away from it. And lo and behold, I changed directions. But I would just say that in whatever we're doing, we just have to lean into it. Accept the challenge, and you're going to find your mantras.
Welcome to the Waste No Day podcast, a podcast specifically for and about the home services industry as it relates to plumbing, heating, air conditioning, and electrical. More than a podcast, Waste No Day is a credo, a determination, a mindset. It is a never-ending discipline. It is a refuse to lose pursuit. It is a wake-up call every morning to waste no day. Now here's your hosts, Brian Burton and Nate Minnick.
Hey, welcome to another episode of the Waste No Day podcast. Your hosts, Nate and Brian, are hanging out with you, and I got to say I'm thankful to have a little bit more of a voice back. We're excited to have a new episode. This time we're featuring none other than Brandon Duncan, and man, does he have some hard-hitting content we're going to be exploring today about the Bulletproof mindset. Before we jump into that, though, we're going to look to Brian for our quote.
20 years from now, you will be more disappointed by the things you didn't do than by the ones you did do. So throw off the bow lines, sail away from safe harbor, catch the trade winds in your sail, explore, dream, and discover. Mark Twain.
All right. I was thinking Styx. Come sail away, come sail away.
Huh?
Yeah.
You got that drop ready? Go ahead and play it. Yeah. All right. We're still working on the studio here. We actually got transferred to another room.
We did, yeah. It's nice. A little dungeon-y, but we can work on that.
It is in the basement of the basement of the basement.
Which is actually kind of ironic because our podcast today is about attitude and trying to get yours out of the basement.
Bulletproof mindset.
That's right.
The reason that I went with that quote, one, I love that quote. I've had that quote written on boards and walls many times. I guess I'm not really ready to articulate why. I should have thought of this before. Go ahead, pause it, buddy. Thanks. All right, let's talk about this. I don't know. It makes me feel, the quote makes me feel less mundane and maybe monotonous. I don't love monotonous routines and like doing the same thing every day, especially at the same time. And then that is kind of what my job entails. So every now and then to think in these terms helps a lot. And I met Brandon Duncan, whose birthday is today as we're recording this. So Very happy birthday to Mr. Duncan.
Happy birthday, Mr. Duncan.
I met him in Hawaii, and he and his wife kind of give me and my wife that feeling of like just never miss an opportunity to have a good time. I mean, they're very focused people and very driven people, and we really enjoyed our time with them. But at the same time, they're about having fun and really enjoying each other and enjoying the people around them. So I know Brandon is going to be, he sent us an email at 1:30 in the morning our time last night to give us his 10 bullet points to go over, which was at 11:30 his time, Utah.
It certainly was late into the evening.
Yeah, so that's the kind of guy he is. So he always brings the fire and well thought out, but also fun. He's a fun dude. I'm positive we're going to have a good time with him today. And yeah, I was going to go with a mindset quote, but this quote makes me think of Brandon and Michelle Duncan.
Yeah. It's great to have people like that who have paved the way. And as we conversate with Brandon, I think you'll hear that because it's one thing to have, some fancy words and some cool colloquialisms and all that about mindset and, having the right attitude. It's another thing to live it out. And when you hear him talk, when you hear his voice, when you hear the things that he says as far as stories and experiences, I believe it's more than just words. It's something that he practices. And I have to say, after we interviewed him, I've actually been putting some of that into practice myself. And so to you, Brandon Duncan, if you're listening to this, Thanks, man. You made a difference in my life.
By the 10 rules of a bulletproof mindset?
Specifically the one where he talked about coming home and pausing and asking yourself, what would an 8 mindset do when they walk into that house?
Nice.
Yeah. And I mean, that's for me going home, but I think the same could be true rolling up to a house. It's basically, you're projecting like what would somebody who's successful, what would somebody who's in the right mindset, what's somebody who's going to be a great dad, what's somebody who's going to be a great technician, what would they do? What would that actually look like when they walk into that house? And
they would be wearing a Michigan Wolverines hat. Let me explain.
They certainly would not be doing that.
When I was in a truck, I don't know.
Hey, that's a good point, Brian. Did we follow up on the game? I don't think we did. How'd that go? No?
You're a funny man, Nate.
Okay. All right. That was well timed. Well timed.
Can we cut out that 2 Mississippi in between me saying that and running over to press the button?
A typical Michigan fan.
Edit that out in post.
Yep. Nice.
So when I was in a truck, this wasn't my own. I don't remember where I got it, but I was getting beat up there for a minute, especially in the beginning of my career. I cared about my production, my numbers, my client fulfillment, my ratings. And at the end of the day, it seemed like if any of these didn't go well, like let's say I heard I had a call back that another guy had to run. Let's say a client called in and was unhappy with me. Let's say I ran my last 2 calls and didn't do anything, just wasted my and their time. I would take that home with me and be in a bad mood. And I would just assume like that's how I'm supposed to feel. It just is what it is. There's nothing I can do about it. And I was getting some heat for it at home from Amelia, obviously. And I don't know if it was like Ken Goodrich or Lance Fernandez or maybe somebody they brought in, but maybe a Brian Tracy tape back in the day. But I heard a technique to fix this. And obviously it's not a perfect fix, but it helped a lot, which is I was one who wore a hat often in a plumbing truck, had my Yes Plumbing hat on, my Ben Franklin plumbing hat on. And I had a Michigan hat in the passenger seat. And when I pulled up to the house, I would take the plumbing hat off in the rearview mirror, and I would put the Michigan hat on. I'd look in the mirror and say, it's not plumbing time now. It's husband time. It's father time. It's whatever time. And what's the first thing I need to do when I get in there? I need to make them feel glad that I came through the door. Let's get everybody a little bit more excited as a result of me getting home, instead of the other way, which is let me take out the frustration of my last call on the poor victims inside the threshold of the front door.
I like that, Brian, and for one reason, because you actually made a physical change, which does make a difference in our attitude. Like you made a conscious effort to literally shift hats, not even just figuratively, literally shift hats into a different mindset. And that's so much of what it is. I mean, it's when it comes to our attitude, when it comes to how we are living our lives, interacting with others, sometimes we actually have to shift hats, change shirts, whatever analogy you want to use. But a physical one makes more of an impact, I think, than the mental shift can.
I recommend getting a number 1 dad hat, because if you're getting home after Georgia shows up in the first ever playoff game for the Michigan Wolverines and beats your team like a dog, and you have to put that hat on.
How many points did they score?
I don't remember, Nate.
Well, it was the reason I asked is I think it was pretty close to number 1 dad. It might have been number 3 dad. Oof. I think that's what it was. Number 3 dad.
What was the score of that Michigan Penn State game in Penn State this year?
Are you going to relive that?
I'm just asking a question.
That's the only thing you have.
I'm just curious. Okay. What was that? You remember?
I don't.
Let me look it up.
I think it was closer than 3 to 27. I think it was closer than that.
It wasn't. That was the first half, wasn't it?
Even worse. All right, Brian. Well, all joking aside, the matter.
34-11. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Now all joking.
Yeah, all joking aside, Mr. Brian Burton, Mr. Nate Minnick had a very special lunch the day before yesterday.
We did. The Waste No Day boys were hanging with us, a bit of a celebrity.
Dr. Oz.
Yeah.
Dr. You want to know why I know he's cool and down to earth? Besides the fact that our conversation with him was good, he was very into the skilled trades labor gap. Like, how are we getting people into the trades? Good conversation. He has some ideas. I'm excited about his potentially joining the U.S. Senate from Pennsylvania. He's going to certainly get my vote. Not recommending what you should vote for, but yeah.
We're not sponsored here.
No, not whatsoever. When the waiter came up and asked him what he wanted to eat, you catch what he said?
I believe he said, just give me whatever you're famous for.
Give me whatever you're known for.
Yep.
And he got a crab cake sandwich with coleslaw, and he popped that bun right off like a man who's watching his carb intake. I like that.
And went straight for the combo.
The combo, he put his coleslaw with his crab cake. I liked it.
It's a rare move.
A little crunch, a little cool flavor to it with the coleslaw. Yeah, I'm a fan.
Must have been all those health episodes he taped on TV.
Yeah. He was stopped in conversation while biting his food
multiple times.
No less than a dozen times by it seemed like the same lady over and over. Just
but it wasn't. It was
75-year-old woman going about 4'10" who just had to give him a hug and whisper, I hope you win. That was a good time.
He was a nice guy. He really was.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you to Matt Buckwalter, our boss, for hooking that up.
That was very cool.
Yep. And he and his people assured us walking out that they are going to check out an episode of the podcast and arrange to get on the show.
We can only hope. But what you can hope for right now.
I'm going to do more than hope, buddy.
What you can hope for right now.
Show up at my man's house like, you made a promise.
Yeah, okay, you do that. What you can hope for right now is a great episode with some intense content. And Brandon's going to be walking us through 10 steps, his 10 steps for the Bulletproof mindset. So this is going to be one of those ones, if you're driving, might be a good idea to, hit pause and take a voice memo or something like that on some of these notes, because it really is systematic in how he lays it out. It's not formulaic, but it certainly is very organized and very thought out. And so one of those things we want to encourage you to maybe document, put down your notes, tape one of these up on your visor on the truck, and take a look at it on a regular basis.
Yeah, the organized part was Nate. The very well thought out part was Brandon. Brandon's a lot like me. It's got a lot to offer. It's kind of all over the place, and we need somebody like Nate to put it all into compartmentalized sections for us. But he did send us over a list of 10, so hit us up on Facebook if you want to get that list emailed to you.
Absolutely. Without further ado, we're going to put Brandon Duncan into your passenger seat. Our guest today is Brandon Duncan. He is the CEO and founder of My Buddy the Plumber, Electric Heating and Air, based out of Utah. And we're excited to have him on and joining us. He's actually a friend of Brian's that he met on a vacation together, at a vendor vacation. And we're excited to have him join the show. So welcome to the show here, Brandon.
Thank you guys for having me. I really, I've enjoyed your podcast over the last couple months. So once I met Brian, I've been listening and I really like it.
Thanks.
Tell us that story, that amazing story of how you met Brian. This is Nate, by the way, not Brian. Obviously.
Yeah. So, ultimately, when I met Brian, we were on a Amana trip in Hawaii. It was nothing but excitement and relaxation. So it was quite the time.
Yeah, it was a great time. We hung out. What was the first time? Oh, they had the Amana Cabanas. The Amana Cabanas sounds like a Cuban singer. Amana Cabana. Yeah, they had the cabanas, and we just started talking during one of them, and then ended up hanging out pretty much the whole rest of the week. So that was fun. We even went fishing together. Caught my first mahi with Brandon standing beside me.
Yeah, needless to say, it was the only mahi caught. And, it was a pretty long boat ride for one fish.
It was the only fish caught. Yeah. And that doesn't mean we caught any mammals either. We caught one fish, and the crew didn't seem all that excited about us catching another fish, to be perfectly honest.
Got paid.
Yeah, I don't
already.
think so. I mean, I don't know if the bait is like supposed to skip across the water, but it just seemed like they were kind of there to take us on a pleasure cruise, and our boy Judd just crashed out on the table.
Judd, that's right.
So pretty wild, but it was a good time. Me and Brian had a lot of time to talk and kind of go over, how he got to where he was and kind of my journey. And, I think that's where we kind of got to know each other really well. And has led to kind of this moment.
Yeah, it was a great time. You were great to connect with for sure. I don't know, just different from certainly anyone else I connected with on that trip. And Brandon and I still text and chat pretty often as a result. And I've wanted to get you on and tell your story and talk about some of the things you talked about for some time. But getting you to click on a calendar link and go ahead and set that up, I've found to be impossible. I don't know how Rochelle deals with it personally, but then
it's a defect.
Friday, I said we had a spot just open for this spot right here. I don't know, 3 days ago, I texted you, can you make it? You're like, yep. I'm like, okay, then why didn't you just press the calendar 2 months ago?
I live life, quarter mile at a time.
That's right. Okay. Yeah, you told me that while we were standing on the back of a boat watching the sunset.
Okay.
Live my life a quarter mile at a time.
Nick Cage over here.
But I appreciate you being here now. And the big thing I wanted to talk more about was how you said you teach and you use yourself, teach your kids, and teach your techs to have a bulletproof mindset. And the way you explained what that meant and the fact that you have that somewhat broken out by your 10 commandments or rules, if you will. I was like, dude, this would be a great episode of the podcast for me personally, and for Nate certainly, and then our listeners, obviously.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's kind of funny. You kind of got to go back in time, and, I've been developing this over the past 10 years. And it's kind of funny because it really started with, I did a lot of the sales training, and so I'd have topics, here and there, but every once in a while, I just, honestly, I wouldn't prepare anything. And so I'd kind of freestyle, and we'd start talking about something, and it would kind of lead to this question like, okay, well, what is the most important thing to do in a plumbing service call? Or what is, what's the most vital thing you could do? And then, so I would throw that out there. And if I threw that to you, Brian, like from start to finish in the whole process of a plumbing service call or an HVAC call, like, give me some ideas of some things that you would say are the most important.
Ask them to buy.
Okay, I like that. So ask them to buy, and I'd write that on the board. And then, Nate, what do you think? What's something that's important in that process?
Yeah, setting clear expectations as to why you're there, what you're going to be doing, how long it's going to take, questions, etc.
Awesome. Yeah, and then we would talk about the value of, the uniform and showing up on time, and, closing and everything like that. We would just go over it. And then inevitably someone would throw out attitude, and then all the guys would be like, yeah, that's big. That's big. Mm. And I said, okay, well, how big? And then I just say, kids, I said, well, let's do another experiment. Let's put these in order, and every time I did that, attitude found its way to the very top. And I mean, I've probably done this 10 times over 10 years, and every time attitude's found it at the top. And so I would ask myself, like, okay, well, it started to become a pattern. So I would say, like, then I would kind of follow with a leading question. Okay, well, if attitude is the most important thing, guys, what is the last thing you did to improve your attitude? And they'd all look at me like a blank slate. Like, right. So, like,
question.
I'd ask you guys, like, what's the last book you guys read for your attitude?
Well, I just had lunch. That improved my attitude. Does that count?
You have to have lunch with me, Brandon. You know what that'll do for a person's attitude.
Dude,
You've had many a lunch with me at this point.
He's on fire then, you know?
Don't tell him that.
But the truth is that we have to, we really, like, if it is the most important thing, like, how many books have I read about closing? How many books have I read about, just presentation and things like that? And I will say that, the great thing about most sales literature that's in the market today, from Jeffrey Gitomer to, Brian Tracy to Grant Cardone, they do talk about attitude in there. They do approach this topic, almost all of them. They understand the value, as well as closing and everything like that. But I just find that it's kind of the start. It's the catalyst. It's the spark that is going to ultimately bring all those pieces together. And I think that's why it finds itself to the top. But what I found is that how many times of the day, if I said to you, Brian, check in with me right now. Where are you? 1 to 10. Where are you?
I'd say an 8 right now, currently.
An 8, right? And Nate, if I said the same thing to you, where are you checking in at?
That was the number I had, 8.
Cool. And to be honest, like, I check in most days at an 8. But what I will tell you is that that's a great number. Like, for me, that's kind of what I ask my technicians to try to put their world on, is an 8. I mean, 10 is something when something really walks in, you close a deal, you can bump up to a 10 and you're really rolling. Like, that happens. And it's hard to stay on a 10, but I've seen guys, really, really get on fire and they're at that 10 level and nothing seems to faze them. I mean, at that point they're Teflon and everything is bouncing off of them and all they're doing is making money and they're happy and they're really performing. But you and I, we all know that, as a technician in a truck, it's very easy to start the day at an 8 and then before long find ourselves at a 4. You ever been there, Bri?
Oh yeah, absolutely. In the truck, it's like one phone call can derail your 8 or 6 or whatever, and it's especially bad if you start the day at a 4. you only have 4 pegs to slide down from there.
Yeah, and that's what I found, is that some of these guys, they had no chance. They started a 6, and then in this false reality that they live in, they literally believe that the minute they approach Mrs. Jones's house, they can flip a magical switch and go from a 6 to an 8. Do you believe that, Brian?
I do believe that all of our techs think that way naturally, as did I in a truck until I no longer thought that way. And it's it would be a lot like a football team. A guy just walking past the locker room. I'm going to skip all this part here. I'm just going to go right out onto the field from whatever I came from outside of the building, arguing with the wife or, what have you, traffic, getting cut off and getting into it with somebody. And you just walk right past the locker room where you get your head in the game and you get focused with your teammates and get that pep talk from the coach. And you just run right out onto the field, which is probably a lot like the mindset that we carry naturally of just thinking we're going to go from whatever we were dealing with before we knock on this front door to the time we're talking with this client.
Right. And we've all played in that same game against the guy that's like, okay, now I'm going to turn it on, dude, I'm up by 10 points. I know, but right, you're about to get it. I'm going to turn it up. Now you're going to regret this. And how many times does that ever really happen where the guy actually said he's going to turn it up and all of a sudden you're down by 10?
Well, in terms of my children, I feel like that happens 9 times out of 10. Keep on going, see what happens. But in terms of attitude, I mean, I think
that's
you're right.
Counting to 10.
Yeah. In terms of attitude, you're right on, man. Like you can't, it's very difficult to manufacture attitude.
Yeah. And I think that's the point that I'm trying to get across to technicians and, and make a change in my guys and in myself. Like, and that's, and this process for me, like I said, I had to go back and say, like, cause, technicians and people that work with me will say to me, like, Brandon, nothing phases you. Like, you're just the most even keel guy I've ever met. Nothing phases you. And, and I always used to kind of think, well, is that me? But that didn't always used to be me. And then I kind of had to break down, well, what got me to hear that nothing, I don't let anyone faze me, because at this point, like, for example, you guys run a plumbing, heating, and air and electrical company, and big things come up every day, right?
Sure.
And you can't let that big thing take you off your game, right?
No, I mean, that's part of leadership, right? You have to go out there and be the same consistent presence no matter what the day's bringing.
Absolutely. And so that's kind of what I started just to figure out. What did I do different, or what am I doing different than some of my technicians or some of my CSRs that, seem to fluctuate and to be a little more volatile in their behavior throughout the day. And maybe there's something I can give to them that can help keep them in the seat, help keep them focused. And again, if you think about it this way, no matter what you're dealing with in the day, whether it be like a disciplinary action or whether it be a bonus or whatever it is, if you approach that situation at a 4 and handle it, or if you approach it at an 8, the outcome is, though the situation gets handled, the outcome is probably vastly different. Would you agree?
Agree.
Yeah. So I would just say that, life, if we really want to succeed, then really what it is, handling as many situations that we find ourselves in at an 8 instead of a 6 and a 4, Yeah. So ultimately, I think that's what it adds up. The grand sum of your life, handling an 8 will be a great thing if you handle most of your problems at an 8. But if you're handling most of the problems at a 4, you're going to get a mediocre outcome.
Oh, that sounds so intriguing, Brandon. I'm glad we have you on. You've talked about how you found your way here on the episode as a guest. How about you bring us up to speed on how you found your way into the trades to begin with?
Yeah, so I was really fortunate. I had a father who owned a plumbing company. He did commercial plumbing. And, I would go to job sites with him since I was probably 12 years old, and it was just something to do, hang out with Dad. And then I started working for him, full time when I turned 18. I started just, I started traveling from state to state doing Walmart supercenters and neighborhood markets and Sam's Clubs and things like that. And, through that process, I was really grateful, because that's where I learned how to be a real plumber. I learned the trade. And that was invaluable but eventually, the economy took a tank. I was actually, most of my time with my father was actually running around the same town as Brian over in Las Vegas, Nevada.
Oh, nice.
So it was, like I said, but I was just I was tackling a different animal. I was just, doing commercial plumbing and, learning how to be a plumber. But that was a huge blessing for me. And I'll kind of talk about that, a little bit later, but it was a blessing that I learned to be a plumber. I had no idea how to do sales. I had no idea how to approach customers. But the one thing I did have is that I was a good plumber, and that helped me later on in my career when I found service. Just being a professional and knowing how to do most of the jobs that I ran across. But ultimately the economy tanked. I ended up having to bounce out of Las Vegas. I basically ran into, I was unemployed for about 9 months, and the only company that was hiring was a company called Whipple Service Champions here in Salt Lake City. And, I'll forever be grateful for, them and Kent Whipple, the owner, that, kind of brought me in and showed me the way. Ultimately, I would have to say that, Kent Whipple was the one that, when I said that, kind of how I came up with this program, Kent Whipple was the one of my big steps is, a mobile university, basically, taking your service truck and turning it into a university where, you're reading books and things like that. He's the one that got me started on that. And those books have been, a catalyst to a lot of changes in the behavior. I mean, when I went to work for Kent Whipple after being unemployed for 9 months, and I thought I'd apply with him and I'd just get the job. But to be honest, I came back to Salt Lake City. I was living in my mother-in-law's basement. I was barely, after being unemployed for 9 months, I didn't have really a dollar in my bank account. I was desperate. I kind of came back from Las Vegas with my tail between my legs, and kind of a shell of who I was. So, I couldn't have come to a better place in the world than, to get into a company that actually cared about my growth, that cared about, me becoming my best self. And so it was a huge blessing to kind of find that. And to be honest, I think that, the only reason that I ended up kind of on my own was just that I really didn't understand one of the principles. And that is when I started to make these changes, and in making the changes, I started seeing some really hard obstacles come up, and I backed away from them in the company that I was at, and I wasn't quite ready. And I guess I wish I would have known that those were coming. And, like I said, I think that there's so many ways to go and make it big. I mean, even working for Kent Whipple and getting through that, that little hiccup, I know that there's so much money in service that a guy can come and, live a great life and find a company that feels like home and progresses in. And, like I said, I feel in that way, I kind of fell down. And so basically what I found myself doing is I actually was showing up late to meetings because we had so many. And, I had a lot going on in my life at the time. And, I wasn't the exemplary employee. And I ended up, to be honest, they ended up letting me go. And so I had to sit with that. And at that point, I really had no choice but to either go work for another service company or try to figure this out on my own. And, I think I told Brian when I started, I went and found a van on our local, we call it KSL, but maybe it's like Craigslist, I found a van that some dude had, and I literally paid, he wanted $5,000 for it. I had, $4,700, some of it in loose change. And he ended up giving me I told him, I said, well, would you take $4,500? And he ended up saying yes. And it saved me the embarrassment of paying in loose change. And so, but it was every dollar I had. And I thought that life was hard at Whipple Service Champions. Well, it just got a little bit harder, and I needed to really get a game plan for where I was going. And so I just, like I said, I just really dug in. And that was kind of the start of, kind of learning this process. And to be honest, like as a company, it took 5 years to really start making some real changes and some real moves, and for me to figure out, where I was going and how to really maximize this mindset so that you can, really get to the next level. So I don't know if there's anything else you want to know about like my story but that's kind of it. I mean,
yeah, I mean, I love the authenticity of it. The fact that you were kind of down and out and turned the whole thing around. And I'm sure that's where a lot of your motivation for having that attitude comes from, because you've been on the other side of it.
Yeah. I mean, today, I think that it's hard for me to be as relatable as I once was. I mean, the guys that, came and worked for me from day one, I mean, we were kind of a band of brothers that, I mean, guys that make comments to me all the time, like, well, I love working for a guy that, his house is smaller than mine. And I think that, I think that that's something that, ultimately did endear people to me. And I always tried to keep it that way. I try to, I think that it's so important to give back to your people and really, to be part of it. And I've loved every part of the process, because though there have been some really hard, challenging moments in running my own company, like who I've become in the process is someone that, I'm proud of today. And what I'm really proud of is, seeing these individuals that have trusted me come in and watch them thrive and watch them grow and hit some of their goals that they've set. I mean, nothing like to this point, to be honest, like I challenge all my guys to write their goals on mirrors and then text them to me, and, then I write on and then the picture I text back to them was just basically my goal on the mirror, saying that my goal is to help you reach your goals,
Yeah, I love that.
And so it's kind of fun to, and I just believe that as you own what you're doing and you really can put it on that mirror and you can account for it every day, you're going to see some changes happen. And like I said, so I have it kind of broken out in a mindset. I don't know if you guys are ready to jump into that or the steps or.
Absolutely, man. So we're focusing on the concept that you brought to us, which is actually having that bulletproof mindset. So bulletproof in terms of, not allowing anything to affect it or to bump it off of course, I'm guessing, right?
Yeah. Like I said, I mean, if the goal is to operate and make as many decisions at an 8 to have the best outcome, then we can't let these trivial things that come into our lives get us off the track. And we all live real lives. And, especially, like I said, our technicians, like, for example, when Brandon came into the service industry, my life was volatile. I didn't know if I'd be able to pay the bills the next month. I was depressed. I had a lot of stuff that I needed to clean up. And ultimately, I had to develop this mindset so that I could change and so that I could see a better outcome and a better future. And it's been, like I said, it's been an 11-year process, but I feel like at this point, like it's finally starting to unfold. And and now it's just really, for me, it's just a pattern of, keeping that up and watching the byproduct of operating at that level of attitude come into my life.
Okay. Well, you've given us 10 steps here to kind of prompt you on. And I want to start off with what is step number 1. And I would assume you kind of listed these in order of, first things first. So is step number 1 the thing that we need to do first before everything else follows? And what is it? Well,
step number 1 is to set inspired goals, and I use the word like inspired because I think that there's a difference between setting a goal that is just a goal that we write down, and there's a goal that we feel like it came from somewhere else, that literally it was inspired, it came to us, and therefore we can have more faith in it. And I always used to tell, I still tell my guys this, but I say, your goal should require a small miracle, and I know that, like, for some people that really, they hear it and they say, oh, that's cool. But for me, I'll be honest with you, like, I've found in having 10 years of setting goals, I've just seen that I've always set the goal knowing that I'm capable of this much, but that there is that force out in the universe, and call it what you want, but that is there to help us get to that next level. And I've kind of leaned into that and said, hey, I can do this much. And I'm going to expect that if I do this much, that this much will be made up. And more, and every time I've done that goal has been delivered to me. So I just say, like, that's how that you've got a goal that's inspired. You got a goal that you can put some faith in, and we'll talk a little bit more of that down down the line. And just so you know, like, I got this pattern of setting goals, mainly from the book Think and Grow Rich. So, that's something that, I'm really big on is these books. So this came from
Napoleon Hill. That was the one you said really, really changed your life, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's one that, that I can say, like, even, what was really cool about that book is, it was recommended to me by Kent Whipple, the owner of Whipple Service Champions. And I just told him, I said, hey, you got me reading these books, but I don't really like to read. Can I take a shortcut? What's the best one? Just give me the best one, your favorite. And that's the book he told me, Think and Grow Rich, And I said, well, if that's his favorite, then I'm going to go and read it. And what was kind of cool with that book that happened for me was, I took it home, I started reading it, and then I kind of turned to my wife and said, hey, I think you should read this book. And so she started reading the book. And what was really cool is that literally she started reading it and seemed even more excited about it than I was. And in fact, she was so excited about the process and just started practicing the principles that she ended up writing kind of having this idea that she should write a book. It ended up morphing into like a children's book. She said that literally, the book kind of just came to her and she just wrote it down. She ended up getting it published and, started kind of marketing it.
Oh, nice. What's the book title?
It's just called Middle Schmiddle. It's just a children's book. It's, kind of about our three girls and it was just one of those things that for her, it was, and I saw that come to fruition. And I thought, there was in my mind, just some divine assistance that all went into that. And it kind of woke me up to the potential. And so, I took the challenge and I wrote down some goals, and I started, executing them and then watching them start to happen in my own life. And so that was the book that really, if you want a book that's going to help you lay out some good faith-filled goals, start with that one. That's a great one. And then one of the principles in the book that you'll read, and this is part of my deal, and step number 2 is to read those goals twice a day. Right? So you got to put them in a spot that you're going to read them. So I personally put them on the back of my phone. I don't know about you two, but literally I have this phone with me nonstop.
I would never see it because I'm always staring at the screen.
That's so true.
That's not going to work.
Yeah. Well, mine's just the screensaver in the back. It always reminds me that they're there. It holds me accountable to them. And that's where I put them. But for step number 3.
Oh, you mean the background of your phone, like your screensaver?
Yeah, the background.
Okay.
Yeah, the screensaver. So it's just my goals in the background of the phone, and and a lot of the times, like I said, and one thing. So I have this guilty habit. I play solitaire. It's like the weakness in my bulletproof mindset, but I do play this game, and what I have is that one app. And I actually put it, I put that as the one app. So when I scroll over, all I can see is my goals. And then that app lays on top of them. And, most of the time it is a time for me to reflect, and if I go to play it, at least I'm seeing my goals in full effect, So it keeps me accountable. But then I kind of liked, what I've been trying to do is write them on the mirror. Because I read a book by David Goggins, Can't Hurt Me. Any of you guys read that one yet?
Oh, yeah. Audio book.
Yeah. Audio. Oh, that's all I do, by the way. And
okay.
Don't get it twisted.
Yeah, let's get that cleared up. I was like, I thought I liked this guy. He's talked about nothing but reading. I think I'm out on him. All right, good. Audiobooks.
Yeah.
We're on the same page.
Just so you know, let's be clear. And I think that, I want people to know, one of the things that I think that people need to know about me is that, to kind of go back and hopefully to give a little bit of validity to this process is that literally I spent my entire education in the resource program, you know? And so I try to tell people, like, you know, there's, you know, this process is not about taking, you know, smart people, and it's about taking, like, you know, most of us that find ourselves in the trades typically, you know, have some sort of learning disability, whether it's dyslexia, whether it's, you know, just sort of a processing, auditory processing problem, or whether it's just attention, you know, ADD or whatever we get labeled with.
That's a huge one. Yeah, I can name on one hand, probably less than one hand, one finger, the amount of techs I know or knew or grew up with or worked with that were like honor roll students. Like those guys went off to college. Those guys went off to something else. It was rare that you know, you're dealing with a fellow technician, plumber, HVAC, electrical, what have you, who's extremely skilled in the classroom.
Yeah, and I found that too, and I found it in my company, and I'll tell you that it's not indicative of intelligence. It's just that you have something. And a really good book, you know, that I read was Malcolm Gladwell's David versus Goliath. You know, that was kind of the key that unlocked my excuses. You know, I had all these excuses built around, you know, that I had these disabilities, or that I wasn't as smart as the next guy. And then all of a sudden, Malcolm Gladwell writes this book and tells me that my dyslexia is a superpower. And I look at it through a different paradigm and see where it really is a superpower. And just instead of fighting it, I started leaning into it. And now I really do believe that this dyslexia is a superpower for me because of the way that it allows me to process information, the way that I've, you know, built workarounds that people don't see and don't even know exist. So that's a really good one. If you're a technician, you're listening, and you really do, you're kind of down on yourself, like Malcolm Gladwell's David versus Goliath was a game changer for me, for sure.
Oh, well, I had a question for you, Brandon. So, I mean, step one is setting inspired goals, which I love that. And it's certainly the time of year that traditionally people focus on the annual goals or big goals that they want to accomplish during the year. And then put them, review the goals twice a day. And that's the part that I wanted to ask you. Like, in terms of reviewing the goals, is that something you're saying out loud, or is it just like the mental image? Do you have to have an accountability partner that you can actually like go over the goals with them, or what do you utilize for your review?
Yeah. So like I said, for me, I just kind of review them, you know, I really look at it. And to be honest, like what I have found that if you really believe that goal, like when you set it and you're inspired on it, like if I sometimes miss that step, it's not that I'm not reviewing it. I would say that give yourself some credit that you're thinking about it in the day. You know, that also counts, right? We don't have to have this ritual of I look at it and read it, but I do. If I'm not thinking about it every day, and I would just tell you that also, if you find yourself not thinking about it every day, then it's probably not an inspired goal.
That makes
right?
sense.
Probably not the right mark. And you know, one funny thing that I did too was like I would take my goals and I would use them as passwords into different accounts.
Oh, I like that.
You know, so that I was writing them every day.
Where'd you get that, bro?
Dude, just I can't tell anyone my goals sometimes because then they got like half my passwords. You know? But I do try to mix it up. I can't just put it like the dollar amount, but it is amazing.
I love that.
Yeah,
like
think about how many
something something so annoying about how many passwords you have to enter on a daily basis, and to have that at your fingertips, you know, 5 times a day. That's fantastic.
Yeah, and so it's powerful because you're manifesting it. You know, like letting people know, you know, that this is your goal. And again, I will tell you another thing I didn't write in this, but I will throw just as we talk about goals. You have to be careful. But I would just tell you that I was very open with people about my goals very early on, you know, and you know, it's funny as I've reached some of these milestones in my life, I've had a lot of people come back to me that I told, you know, 10 years ago about these goals. And some of them have come clean and said, Brandon, I either thought you were crazy or you were just the most arrogant SOB I've ever met, and I kind of laugh at that because, I do realize that sometimes when you're talking about these lofty goals, and if people aren't in that mindset and they're not working to reach them, these things that you're saying to them are ridiculous and just so unattainable that they can't even process it. I mean, I remember one year I went to my mother, and this was probably year 4 in my business, year 4, year 5. And I just told her, I told her a dollar amount. I told her I was going to make $350,000 that year. And that was more than double what I made the year before, and my mom kind of just started laughing, and she said, Brandon, do you have any idea how much money that is? And I said, well, I think I have a good idea. And, but I'm just letting you know that's what's going to happen.
The Ferrari outside has a good idea how much money that is.
Yeah. And so needless to say, not only was I, by telling my mother that and having her laugh at me, really did give me fire, and so sometimes you hear like people like Michael Jordan, they use these things to fuel them. And sometimes I would, depending on, what I could tell what someone thought, I thought, well, I can do this and I will do it. And so it really does create an accountability team, much like this, David Goggins, he has this accountability mirror, and that's where I think that, this is something that I'm doing now. It's kind of my first year to kind of really enact the mirror, because I do like the idea that I have to stand in front of it and own it. This is me. I wrote that goal down and I have to own it. And I think there's something powerful to that. And I would just say, David Goggins is also a dude that's, knows how to put some goals out there and go hit them, So if anyone wants, like I said, if you want to clean up your goal setting, Think and Grow Rich, David Goggins' book, Can't Hurt Me, is another one. I'm telling you, man, I read that book and I thought, dude, I am such a wussy, I can't even, this guy is amazing. And I'm over here, I can barely wake up to go think about running.
Right. Yeah. I hear you on that. All right, Brandon. So we've covered 3 steps already. So set inspired goals, review your goals twice a day, and put your goals where you will see them. What's the next one?
The next one's, set up your mobile university, right? We have all these technicians that don't know the sacredness of that time they have in their truck while they travel around. We have a lot of executives. We have CSRs. One of my CSRs the other day told me that, she drives quite a ways to get into work. And she says, Brandon, I need to get a raise because I can't afford the gas to get into work. And I kind of thought about that. I thought, well, I just can't give her money to give her gas. And I thought, well, I said, hey, Stephanie, you read, I recommended a book to her. She read and she really enjoyed it, and it's, kind of got back to me on it. And, one thing that we do here at My Buddy the Plumber is that we pay our technicians $100 for every book they read and kind of give a book report.
Oh, that's nice.
So yeah, so it's kind of nice that they don't have to, they always say, well, I can't afford the book. And I said, well, you get $100 when you're finished. So invest in yourself and give me a report and we'll pay for that. And so I told her, I said, Stephanie, you drive, 45 minutes each way. That sounds like a book a week to me. That's $100 you told me it's about $100 a week in gas. Maybe it's time to put, really treat that time as sacred and start investing in your future and get your gas paid for.
So did she
and
do
she was
it?
Like, well, I'm going to ask her today. This was something we just went over 2 days ago.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
She did have a mirror at her desk. So I took the Sharpie and wrote down free gas. All I got to do is read my book.
Oh, that's great, man. That's great.
And so it's kind of cool to, to see and help people do this. But again, to go back to technicians, they drive at least 2 hours a day, at least, no matter where they live. And so, but a lot of the times I've been a technician, and, I love music and I love sports radio. That's really my guilty pleasure. Like that's the one thing that gets in the way of my mobile university is sports radio. And for some people it's talk radio, they want to be up on the latest political movement and whatever. But I would just say, like, at what cost? What are you giving up every day? What could you be learning? What would make you the most interesting person in the company you work for? And my thing to say to them is it would be to gain this information that you're finding in these books and sharing it with others. You would be the most interesting person that worked here if you started a steady habit. So again, my challenge to people is, to read a book every 30 days. So you set up a mobile university, read a book every 30 days.
I love it. And that's in many ways why we are doing what we're doing right now. We are attempting to create a form of information for people to better themselves, right? To get better, to empower themselves, to learn and grow in ways that they wouldn't just listening to the latest pop song or, talk radio and all those things.
Yeah, there's just no question. And so, like I said, the podcasts are great too. We support, anything that's going to take you to the next one. Number 5 is kind of about that daily check-in. So I always say, you got to get on the scale every day. And that's where you have to honestly evaluate yourself and say, where am I? Am I at a, 1 through 10? Am I at an 8? Am I at a 5? Where am I? And every day, and maybe it's before you get in your truck. Maybe it's before you walk in the office door. You check in, you weigh in, and then you go to work to keep that. Because again, if you start at an 8, the chances are that it won't take many shots to knock you down to a 6.
But from an attitude standpoint, I think you're so right there. We talk in other podcasts and many times around here, like what starts well usually ends well. And I think that goes for your mindset as well. If you come into the day and you're already at like a 3 or a 2, I mean, what do you think your day is going to be like, right? Same concept. Yeah. If you go into a home and you're saying like, there's no way this person is buying this. There's no way this person is going to go for this. There's no way this person is going to spend this kind of money. Yeah, you better believe there's a better than average chance you're right, because you're treating everything like that, and your body and your non-verbal cues and everything else is portraying that attitude to the client, and they're going to pick up on it in one way or another.
I couldn't have said it better, brother. I love it. So yeah, check in. Step 6. At this point, you've set the goal. You're reviewing it. You've got a mobile university. You're making changes. You're checking the scale. Now I like to relate this to going to the gym. Like, if you work out like Brian and you just kind of grab those 15s and pump them up and look in the mirror, ain't much going to change. I know that's not true, Brian. That was a cheap shot. Hey, that was a cheap shot. But Brian, think about that. What does it take if you want to change the way you look physically? What is it going to take for you to change it at the gym? What do you got to do?
Yeah, progressive overload, they call it. A little bit more than you did last time. Every time.
Yeah. And you got to tear your muscles, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, You have to break them down if you want to build them up.
That's exactly it. And so if we kind of know that we're getting ready to enter a big change, like for me, it's like, okay, like I'm optimistic that I'm going to reach my goals, but I promise that in mixing up your life this way and in, challenging yourself this way, the universe is going to put some things in front of you that are going to get you ready for those goals and the attainment of those goals. And those come in the form of a challenge. You're going to be hit hard. And this is the one I told you, like when I was working for Whipple, I didn't realize that some challenges were going to come up. And I thought that was indicative that I was on the wrong track. But really, it wasn't that I was on the wrong track. I just didn't accept the challenge. I turned away from it. And lo and behold, I changed directions. But I would just say that in whatever we're doing, we just have to lean into it. So this is where I say, you're gonna accept the challenge and you're gonna find your mantra. So I wanted to know, like, Nate, do you got any mantras that you practice? You ever say to yourself, do you repeat when things get hard?
Waste no day, of course.
I love it. I love it.
No, I can't. I mean, being totally frank, I'm not sure that there's necessarily a phrase or any specific thing that I would repeat over and over again. But I mean, all I have to do is come home to the set of 5 eyeballs that look at me when I walk through the door and come running and give me hugs and things like that, and that's enough to make a whole world of difference in my life.
I've seen his wife, Sarah, and she only has 2 eyeballs. So I don't know where he's getting this. I don't appreciate him talking about her like that. I always had one, I heard, it wasn't a Brian Tracy quote, but I heard it on a Brian Tracy audio book. And he does tend to credit the author. He doesn't plagiarize, but I don't remember who it was, but I've just said it a million times in my head and occasionally training, which is, if it is to be, it's up to me.
Yeah.
That one's helped me out a lot. You
bet. And that was a Kent Whippleism. He used that one a lot too, and like I said, he was a mentor to me, and I've found myself using that one as well. One that I stole from Tony Robbins is, success and failure are on the same road. Success is just a little further down the road,
That's good.
One that I also like, and I thought I'd give you a couple that give these guys a couple that I use. I went through Charlie Greer training. I don't know if you guys have done anything with Charlie Greer, but
know him, but haven't used anything.
He's the tech daddy, and one of the things that he said that he would practice is, we've all been on that job that goes sideways. You need to get home. You've got family pictures, and the job, you're missing a part, you drilled your hole in the wrong spot. It just is, it's unraveling before your eyes. And, you kind of have a choice to either, blow your plans up or really get hyper-focused and get this done as quickly as you possibly can. And so one of the things that he would say is, he said, sometimes I just got to even go in the other room. And I would repeat, I am not going to let anything that has affected me up to this point affect me moving forward. And he would say that, he says, I had to say that sometimes 5 and 10 times, but I would say it until I believed it. And then I would go back into the situation with a new set of eyes, and I would move forward as if none of that had ever happened. And that way I was taking the cleanest, clearest approach to the problem. I really like that.
Yeah, I love the concept of, the mind flush, or however you want to look at that, and saying, okay, time out here. What I'm allowing myself to think on and focus on is no more. I mean, it doesn't mean that it goes away, but it means that there's a time and place to say, okay, here's where things are. Here's what I'm going to do about it. Here's what I can do about it. Here's what I can't do about it. Now let's move on.
Yeah. And he even said that, you use this at home. And I've used it at home. Saturday morning ain't going quite my way. I know that if I take this number 2 attitude with me all day, I'm going to ruin all 5 of those people's fun for the rest of the day because I'm the guy with the bad attitude.
Right.
And, I've had to leave the situation and take the mantra with me and say the same thing and say, hey, I'm not going to let anything affect me that's affected me up to this point affect me moving forward. And then I get in the car and, carry my 8 with me as long as I can. But again, we all kind of get in those scenarios, and we got to kind of have some of these mantras. And my last one that this is kind of the Brandon one, is just that ultimately when these things come up, I repeat to myself, man, I cannot wait for that thing that's about to happen to me come to me, because man, it is getting it's getting real up in here, you know? But because I've practiced this strategy for so long, it's like, to me, it's the evidence that I'm on the right track. Just knowing that it's about to break, and that good thing is about to come rushing in.
Great stuff today, Brandon. Can you review all of those for us one more time?
So the first one, like I said, is like I said, by Tony Robbins. He says basically that success and failure are on the same road. Success is just a little further down the road. And like I said, I really like that one. The one by the Tech Daddy is, basically that I will not let anything that's affected me up to this point affect me moving forward. And then, like I said, my personal mantra is whenever something is going sideways, I accept the challenge and just say, I can't wait for what is about to happen and come into my life to happen, because this has gotten real. Excellent. And this has gotten hard.
Excellent. Okay. So we've done set inspired goals, review your goals twice a day, put your goals where you'll see them, set up your mobile university, get on scale every day. And did I miss one, or is our 6 where we are?
I don't know. Maybe we're off. I think my list is a little different than yours, but let's just say 6 or 7 or whatever. I'm on 7 on mine, and it just says recharge your batteries, and ultimately this is kind of a personal thing, because one of the people I really like to read his stuff is Patrick Lencioni.
Oh yeah. Good guy.
Good guy, runs the Table Group podcast. But one of the things that he has really taught me is that everyone has these working geniuses, and what may charge my batteries may not charge yours. And so we need to really be mindful of what charges our batteries and how we do it. So I kind of have some ideas on, like for me, what charges my batteries are these books I read. They give me confidence. They give me inspiration. They really give me hope. And so that's why I do the mobile university. And so, like I said, even as the owner of a company, you never arrive, because these books are what you're going to be putting in your people. So you've got to constantly be filling the tank. And now, instead of motivating one person, you've got to get enough information to motivate 80. And so it's I feel more obligation to this behavior than I ever have, because if it is to be, it is up to me. And I better have something in the tank to give my team, or what good am I?
Okay. Excellent stuff there, Brandon. I love the concept of recharging the batteries. And I think you're right on there in terms of what works for me isn't going to work for somebody else. So that's really a personal question, right? When it comes down to it, it needs to be answered by the person. Nate, do you have
something that charges your batteries? I mean, what's something that you do?
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this. Is that the recharging batteries piece, does that need to be during the work day, or is that just at any given point during the day in general?
I think it's at any given point. I just think you need to know when your tank is getting low. Like if you want to get to where you're going, I think it'll start to come together as we talk about why you're going to need full batteries, is because you're going to be giving back in this. So you got to have the energy to give to people, and that's the same thing. Like, I tell my technicians all the time, like, you want to see your numbers go up. When you visit Mrs. Jones, you let her take some of your energy. You let her feel you, and that will be different than anything she's ever experienced. She's going to leave there. She started the day at a 6, and after having you in her home, she's matching your energy at an 8. And she doesn't know why she feels so great, but she knows that she feels great just being around you.
Yeah, that's really good. And I think drawing your customers up to your level is your responsibility, right? You know,
Absolutely.
if you're living your life hoping that the next client that you see is going to help your attitude improve, that's a gamble I'm not willing to take.
Yeah. And don't fall on that one. But like, Brian, what's something you do to recharge your batteries? You got any ideas of what you do?
Probably the same as you. It's a piece of a book, audio book. There are some podcasts that I'll listen to recharge other than the Waste No Day podcast, mostly the Waste No Day podcast, but there are some other ones.
There you go.
And there are certain YouTube videos that I can watch pretty much any time that, I mean, what is it when our batteries are drained and dead? It's not typically that or at least for me, it's not that I give too much or that I'm too social or hyping too many people up. It's that I'm getting hit with too many negative things. So the way I operate is I'm usually high energy and high motivation, and that's just kind of how I roll. But then I have to deal with so many bad things throughout the day. Those actually take big chunks of energy out of me because that's not me operating in my natural state. So that's when I'll have to use something and a lot of times it can actually just be a conversation with, one of my peers, Nate, Aaron Buckwalter, Mike Vavrick, where these conversations will get me back on track and re-energize me.
Yeah, I think that's great. And and you actually said it really well, because for some people, they may recharge their batteries through service, and so it really is like, it's going to be up to you to figure out, like, and then, and some people may recharge their batteries by mentoring, so there's just different ways. And those are some ideas that I've found and I've seen work for individuals that work for me, and it may not be through these books, but like I said, I would really encourage that, the books just give you so much motivation, and they give you so much information, and it allows you to then have something to give, something that you may not have, that you didn't have before, but now you do. And now you can share it with the world and really make a change and watch people's lives change. So that's a really good way to charge those batteries, because you're going to go and give it.
Speaking of watching lives change, I believe that takes us into a nice segue to step number 8, which is find a mentor and be willing to ask for honest and constructive feedback.
Yeah. So, and I would even add to that, like, get ready to be a mentor. Not only are you going to go and find a mentor, but then find someone to mentor, like, start to become the person that someone is going to come to and seek some advice. Start becoming the person that is going to charge their batteries. But again, as you find it, in this industry, like, I mean, do you ever, like, see a technician ask another technician and then just flat out tell them, no, I'm not willing to help you?
I'm not sure that I've seen it, but you can hear it in the lack of responses in, like, the text message groups or that type of thing.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I can say that we've seen some of that here too. But I would say, though, if a technician, I guess the way that would kind of show that someone really was looking to change would be that, they would single someone out and they would approach them, and they would move with intention, and they would find that person and let them know that they are someone that they look to as a mentor. And a lot of the times as we approach people that way, you can break down a lot of those walls and barriers by just letting them know that you see them as a leader and a mentor and someone that's, you want to model your life around.
Is that, when you say with intentionality, I mean, I've always looked at that as a two-way street, right? You have to be willing to invest, but they also have to be willing to receive, or you have to be willing to receive even if they're willing to invest.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. I just think that ultimately, in this process, you just have to really trust that, you have to start building relationships and be vulnerable, right? Like, that's kind of what you're saying. Like, I have to be vulnerable. Like, if I really want to be mentored, I have to be humble. Patrick Lencioni, he always says, be smart, hungry, and humble. And I love those acronyms. Smart enough to know where to get the help, hungry enough to go get it, and humble enough to be taught.
So good.
And so, yeah, you just have to have these behaviors, or else, someone's not going to be, if I'm not humble, if I came to you and said, hey, Nate, mentor me, man. And then you start mentoring me, and I'm like, yeah, I got that, bro. No big deal. You got anything else? And you're like,
right.
Nope, I'm all out.
Yeah.
So it's about being ready to be mentored, and I think and the reason why I recommend like trying to become a mentor is so that you can maybe understand what it feels like to be on the other aisle when someone doesn't appreciate the thing that you recommended, and you're like, oh, and maybe you'll see that in yourself.
That's great advice, Brandon. And I think you're so right on there with seeing it in yourself or seeing something in yourself in somebody else. And I mean, I can see that in my children where I see something they're doing and I'm like, where'd they learn that at? Or the things that, in peers or at work, the things that annoy you the most about somebody is because it's in a direct mirror of who you are or a weakness in your own life. And that's why it's annoying to you, because you see it in them and you also know it's a problem in you.
Yeah. And one last thing is this one really does help, but people don't do. But if you really have the balls to ask someone for some honest feedback, and ask someone that will give it to you, that's what a good mentor will do, is be honest with you. But ask them about your weaknesses. If you really want to change, ask them. And, then you'll get some nuggets that, people have been wanting to tell you, but just don't know how, because we're also worried about hurting people's feelings. But at the same time, if, I had a guy one time pull me aside and, and just, I was on a team, and, my teammate wasn't the strongest member. And so when I was kind of giving my report, I kind of kept saying, I did this. And yet I'm on a team with this other guy, and I'm doing this. And at the end of the meeting, the guy pulled me aside and said, Brandon, I think you're a hell of a guy, but I'm telling you, after that meeting, everyone else in there thinks that, you only think about yourself. You're on a team. You have a partner there. You need to say we. And I never forgot that lesson. But the biggest lesson that guy taught me was sometimes people need to hear the truth, because these things that they're struggling with they don't even know they're doing it. I had no idea. And I've never forgot the lesson. And I've never forgot the individual that was brave enough to bring it to me.
Right. Truth will set you free.
That's the truth.
All right. So I think we have 2 left here, Brandon. What are the last ones to wrap us up?
All right. So number 9 is faith. In this world that we live in, everyone just believes it's all on you. It's all up to me. And even that mantra that Brian, says, if it is to be, it is up to me, which is true, because you do have to go and act. But at the same time, I think there's a quadrant in this world that we neglect. We neglect that, there's some assistance out there, and anyone that's, set some goals and have really tried, they've seen it come into their life. They've seen small miracles. They don't know where to give the credit to, but for me, I'm very quick to just say that, I know that we're not alone, and that there's a process, and sometimes you got to trust the plan. Have a little faith to trust that the creator of this whole experiment has a plan for you. And though you may not understand it, all of us can relate to this. We can all say that at some point in our lives, we've looked backwards and looked at one of the biggest struggles or trials that we went through and said, man, that was tailor-made for me to get to here. And so I would just say, have a little faith in the process. Have some faith in your goals. Have some faith that the thing that's so hard right now will not be there in a few days. I tell my guys, as a good example, I say, guys, these guys that have been with me a long time, I said, think of all the things that have come up while running this company. I mean, big things, that we thought in the moment would almost sink us as a company. But guess what? Where are they all at today? They're non-existent.
Yeah.
We got through them, and we're here and we're better because of it. Every big major challenge that I've faced as a company, whether it be a big lawsuit or, I saw a hole in my system, and though it was hard to go through it, I cleaned up that thing and said, you know what? Good thing I only got sued by that one guy, because I was on the hook for 55 other dudes, and now I've fixed the problem so that I'm not open. So we just have to trust that there's more out there. There's more working for us than against us, and we have to trust that and be hopeful. It's hard. We get in our trucks and we listen to talk radio, and we sometimes lose perspective on what's the point. And so I just say, be hopeful, have some faith, move forward, be that power that's out there blessing the lives of people that you go meet, be that energy that is just good in the world. And you'll watch things just melt away, and these obstacles and the things that used to bug you and the things that drag you down. You always say, like, you don't live in the weeds, get out of the weeds and just fly. And so faith is a big part of this. And I think a lot of times it gets overlooked, because sometimes it's a faux pas word that sometimes gets attached to religion, but in reality, it's just real. We practice it every day when we flip on the light switch and the light comes on. We don't know why we flip the switch. We just have faith ultimately that when I do it, the light comes on. And so again, this is a real principle that moves the world, but yet sometimes we don't use it as much as we could.
That's so right on, Brandon. So right on. Okay. Bring us in for a landing here. What is number 10?
Number 10 is, in my mind, the most important one. And the reason that it's the most important one is that, we come to work and we give, as you start down this path of developing a bulletproof attitude, you're going to give a lot of energy, and you're going to, and your peers and your customers and your clients are going to be the beneficiary of this. And it's going to take a lot out of you. And it's, and it may energize you, but it can do a couple things. But I would always say that, it's so important to take these principles that you're learning every day and take them home. I read a book, The Anatomy of Leadership and Self-Deception, and then The Anatomy of Peace by the Arbinger Group. And, one thing I realized is that I sure give a lot of energy to my guys, to my clients, to my marketing department, to all these things. And then sometimes when I get home, I force myself to function at an 8. And then when I walk through the door of my house, sometimes I function at a 6. And I let myself off the hook for the most important people in my life. And so, about a year ago, every time I pull in the driveway, I have another check-in, not just to the door, but I check in and say, hey, these are the most important people that need me at an 8. So it's time to check in. And if I'm at a 6, I better do something to change that. And I better get in there. And sometimes what I do in this opportunity is I'll say to myself, what would an 8 walk in the door and do? What would an 8 function like in my home? And then I just go and I role play that in my mind. And then when something comes to me, like an 8 would go in, ask them how they're doing. And it's been a while since we've gone and grabbed ice cream. They'd go and take them and grab ice cream. Or an 8 would go in and say, hey, let's go in the backyard and play catch. Something that you may not do, but that's what an 8 would do. If you were on fire, that's what they would do. That's what you do to really guide your family. And so then I just go and execute that. And, my family has been so much better. But what I say is that if you're practicing this at home, you can't help but bring it to work with you as well. So this is a lifelong pursuit, and you can't lay yourself off the hook just because you're home. This is where you should be practicing the hardest to have a bulletproof mindset.
You're talking at my heartstrings there, man. I got to tell you, I love that concept because that's near and dear to my heart. I know that I've gotten home many times and I've been in, a 4 mindset, and I walked in the door as a 4, and unfortunately my family is on the receiving end of that. And that's not what I want to be. We had a trainer here a couple years ago, and he was big on the concept of doing well at work so that he could be his best at home. Like getting his stuff organized, making sure that's all taken care of so that when he went home, he was on for the people, like you said, the people that actually mattered in his life. And I remember him saying that, and that is something I appreciate the refresher there. That's something that I need to do as well when I get home, is that check-in, that 30 seconds before you walk into the door, just is my mind in the right place? And I love your question there. What would an 8 performance or what would a 9 performance look like when I walk through this door, and how am I going to get myself there before I actually enter?
Yeah. And it's powerful as you start practicing that every time, and check in, like if you're willing to check in for work, you better check in for those people because, and believe me, they'll notice a difference. Like after a week of doing this, my wife came to me and said, what's gotten into you? And I kind of told her about the book that I was reading, and that book, then circulated around to, her sisters and her family, and they were calling me and asking me about some of these things that, the book teaches. And so it's just amazing. Like I said, these books have so much information that are there to bless our lives, but we just have to dig in or we miss out.
All right, Brandon, I'm just going to review it for our listeners here. So the 10 steps to a bulletproof mindset, we have set inspired goals that you would need a miracle to hit. Number 2, review your goals twice a day. Number 3, put your goals where you're going to see them. Recommend the accountability mirror. Number 4, set up mobile university and make sure you're training yourself. Number 5, get on the scale every day. Where am I at? 1 through 10. Number 6, anticipate the challenge and find your mantras. Number 7, recharge your batteries so that you have enough energy to give back. Number 8, find a mentor. Be willing to ask for honest and constructive feedback. Number 9, have some faith. And number 10, put these principles in practice at home.
You got it.
That is such good advice. I love the way that you just succinctly put that in some, seemingly easy 10 steps, but we all know that this isn't easy. It takes time, it takes practice, and it takes repetition to have that bulletproof mindset really created.
Yeah, it does. But, it's not about who you are today, but who you become in the journey. And, I think this is the moment that you embrace that and lean into that and say, who will I be in 10 years? And I'm telling you that, today you see this challenge, the 10-year challenge popping around on social media, right? And if, it's amazing. I thought about that, where have I come in 10 years? And it's night and day. And it's through practicing these things every day and living them that you can then look back and say, man, I'm so proud of, all the things that I've been able to accomplish. But it is being, definiteness and having that definiteness and purpose and being mindful and intentional about every day, waste no day.
There it is. Well, I know you already have an author in the family, Brandon, but maybe you should take some time to put some of this down on paper.
Hey, and maybe I've thought about it a little bit, because I think that for me, the book that I really want to write and maybe put out to the world is just that, I look at where I've come from and I know that it's relatable for a lot of technicians, but literally, if you ran into someone that knew me 20 years ago, they would probably fall out of their chair knowing that this is who I've become. And so it's nothing about being special. I try to tell people that it's not that I'm special. It's just that I found some habits and held myself accountable to them. And that's ultimately like what that's, I think, the story that I would love to tell people is that no matter who you believe you are, it's, if it's not right and it's not a winner, it's not true. And so, we need to get out there and recreate ourselves and put in the hard work and be willing to. And the great thing about it, Nate and Brian, is that the benefit package that you receive by investing in yourself is so great that it doesn't even feel like work in the process. Yeah. You know, it'll be the greatest and easiest work you'll ever do.
Right on. Well, Brandon Duncan, we appreciate having you on the show today. If people are interested in learning more about you or they'd like to dialogue more about those 10 steps, where's the best way to find you?
You know, they can just email me. That's what I think. I would say the best thing is it's BrandonWDuncan@yahoo.com, you know, and I would challenge people, you know, my brother, just to give one quick little thing, like he loves this table group with Patrick Lencioni, and he reached out to one of the guys that runs the podcast. He moved back to Utah. My brother heard it and said, "Hey, you know, sorry to bug you. I'm sure you get a ton of these emails. I don't want to bug you, but you got to eat lunch. I would love to meet with you." And the guy, you know what he told my brother? You know, he met and ate lunch with them, and it was a really cool experience. But the guy told my brother, he says, "You know, Bryson, I tell people all the time, you know, if they have questions, email me." He says, but very, very few people actually do it. And so I just challenge anyone, you know, if you want more, if you're looking to improve your mindset and you're looking for a mentor, like, you know, then reach out, take the risk, you know, hit me up on an email. You know, I love, like I said, my goal is the more I give, the more I get. And so, you know, the opportunity to help people is there, but you know, we have to be brave enough to reach out and find those people. And you guys know, like, think about all the successful people you've had on this podcast and how they just want to share with you both or with your, you know, the people that are listening to this podcast, that, you know, they just want to share it because it's been so beneficial for them, and they're not bugged. They love it. This is what they do it for.
I love it. All right, Brandon, it's been a privilege to have you on the show today. For Brian and my sake, we appreciate you taking the time to share with us and our listeners. Thanks so much for what you've been doing and for implementing and imparting some of that knowledge on our show today. Thank you.
Guys, thanks for having me.
Hey, we hope you enjoyed this podcast with Brandon Duncan. I know I did. The 10 steps is just really simple and easy for me to follow along with those 10 really critical items that he put in front of us. And one of the things that really stuck with me there is that last point where it has to be practiced at home. And man, all the money in the world, all the best customer service in the world, all the top sales revenues in the world, to me means very little if I don't go home and actually make a difference with the people that make a difference for me. And so I challenge you simply from that as a personal challenge, that get yourself in order. Take this year to get at home in order. Take this year to get at work in order. And the combination of the two of those will make such an impact on your life that you won't regret it. That's it for us here at the Waste No Day podcast. We want to challenge you, like we do every time, to find that bulletproof mindset like Brandon was talking to us about, to choose to wake up with that, to choose to step on the scale and measure where you are, and to choose to wake up each day and waste no day.